Let me ask, if black people did what white people did, and the Jews,
which is
if they got married instead of having 70% of the children out of wedlock, if the mother stayed home and deal with the children when they go and come from school, their father provided. If they set a good example for their kids of working hard, treating people the way they would like to be treated, not blaming at others, would blacks be well off today, or would they still be in this hole that they're in?
I don't know. So how do African Americans find themselves in the condition that they are in America, right? So if we look at all the major indices, right, whether it's health, wealth, etc., we have to ask ourselves, right, how did African Americans find themselves in this particular position?
And you say?
So we look at systems of power to sort of pull all of this stuff out.
And so how did most, not all, but most black Americans end up in such a negative condition?
Well, I think without generalizing, we can say that sure, racism was an integral factor in the condition of African Americans, and we can also say that it's probably largely due to slave culture, right?
Really?
Yeah. There's
and what is racism?
Well, I think if we were to define it broadly, some people would say that racism is discrimination, prejudice against a certain group of people based on their skin color, but I would argue that that's probably a muted definition, that we would have to add systems of power in that definition. But if I'm able to keep you from having a job because you have a size 13 shoe, that's probably, right, would be, if we were to extend this to race, that would be racial.
So who is stopping black people from having a job?
That's really a very strange question, because I wouldn't know the circumstances, right? I mean, what do you mean by that?
Because you said racism is the power kind of.
Yeah, there is a power dynamic that has prevented African Americans from achieving the same level of success as, say, whites. And I'll give an example. So if we were to add up the median income of African Americans in the United States, broadly speaking, it would come out to about $3,000 per family. If we were to do that for whites, the amount would be about $100,000 per family. So then how would you then account for the disparity in the amount of financial acumen or resources that a white family has versus a black family?
So who's stopping black people from achieving those things?
Well, if we were to look at this from a historical standpoint, there have been a number of significant studies that have drawn this out. For example, Kenneth Hamilton's study on white wealth, black repression, where he clearly outlined how in one particular Texas town after the Civil War, whites moved physically and through laws to prevent black people from gaining resources.
So who's stopping black people from achieving financially now?
Today? That's a really hard one, and I think it's somewhat of a loaded question. But I can't speak for everyone, right? All I can understand is that I think America is designed in a way that prevents a lot of African Americans from achieving the same kind of advancement that the white community has.
Who designed it that way, and who's stopping them today?
Well, whites designed it that way.
Who's stopping them
Let's
today?
not get it twisted. Whites have designed the system
so
in a way that
stopping blacks today from being successful.
In some cases, yes. I'll give an example. The way school funding, right? So we look at school funding. School funding is predicated on zip codes, right? So if you live in an area that has high incomes, you'll necessarily go to a school that is well funded. So we know that we can fundamentally understand that. So the proper way to do this would be to apportion the school funding so it's even-handed.
I happen to know that black schools are getting more money than the white schools are because of the black politicians, and white people are afraid now, and yet the blacks are turning out screwed up. Why is that?
I didn't say that.
You didn't say what?
I didn't say the blacks are turning up screwed up.
No, I said that. I said, and yet they're turning out screwed up. So they're getting the money going to the schools.
I'm not so sure. I mean...
that they're screwed up, or that they're getting the money?
Well, I would say this, that there are some inherent problems within the African American community, and not all of them can be attributed to certainly to the white community, but a great number of them can be. I'll just give you an example of this. I went to a historically black college in Texas, Prairie View A&M University.
I'm familiar with that.
And Prairie View was founded because the whites in Texas did not want black students to go to Texas A&M. So they founded Prairie View, and what they systematically did for its existence since 1876 is they underfunded the university. They did this knowing that even under Jim Crow, the idea was separate but equal. They had separate, but it was not equal.
That if that happened, that it happened that way because when people are not supposed to take care of you, you're supposed to take care of yourself. And I happen to know that in the good old days when boys were boys and men were men, if somebody refused to give you something, you go out and get it yourself. It brought out the best in black people.
Yeah, sure.
And because I grew up on a plantation in Alabama under the Jim Crow laws, and because blacks didn't rely on the whites or begging someone for something, they had family, they worked hard, they created their own, they were doing quite well.
But I know that you're not trying to suggest that life for African Americans was some type of a utopia in 1870.
Well, I don't know about
life for most black people was a living hell.
I don't know about 1870, but I know about from 1949 to this day, it's been paradise for blacks. But they're so angry and demoralized, they don't realize it.
I will concede that I think that there are some black people who are definitely angry, and there's good reason for it.
There's never a good reason to be angry. Let me ask, if black people did what white people did, and the Jews, if they got married instead of having 70% of the children out of wedlock, if the mother stayed home and deal with the children when they go and come from school, the father provided, if they set a good example for their kids of working hard, treating people the way they would like to be treated, not blaming at others, would blacks be well off today, or would they still be in this hole that
I don't know how to answer that question because I think the African American experience is unique. I mean, what other racial group had organizations that were designed and built specifically to kill them?
No, I'm asking you.
I mean,
whole lot of other organizations.
Yeah, we could say probably in Nazi Germany, certainly the Nazi regime was designed in a way to exterminate Jews.
White people have been enslaved too, and they're doing quite well.
Where's that?
But I want to go back to my question.
Wait a minute, but where's that?
They were enslaved in this country. They have been enslaved
in this country.
Before.
Where?
Oh, yeah. There were white slaves as well.
Who?
But let's go back to the question.
Wait a minute. White slaves where?
I want to go back to the question. You didn't answer my question first.
Okay.
If black people didn't have 70% of their babies out of wedlock, and they loved what was right and did the right thing, got married, set a good example, taught their kids how to work and be responsible, treat people the way that they would like to be treated, would they still be whimpering and whining and begging and blaming about 1800s?
I don't know. You're making the assumption that inherently there are some of these things that black people don't do. Certainly there is a problem of out of babies being born out of wedlock, but that's symptomatic of the white community. I think
the whites are not begging and blaming. It's the blacks who are begging and blaming.
Well, I wouldn't characterize it as begging and blaming.
What would you call it?
I'm not sure how to answer that. What I would argue is I think that there is an argument within the black community that there is a debt that is owed to black people.
Amazing. So I need to go back to my question because you didn't answer it yet.
Yeah, because I'm not sure quite how to answer that.
If black people, others, if they got married, they set a good example for the kids. The father went out and provided for his family. They taught the kids to work and be responsible. Would the blacks be in the situation they're in today?
Okay, I would argue that your question, just as its surface, is a somewhat loaded question, and I think the bottom baseline answer to that would be, of course, right? We would.
So why not teach them to do that?
Who's not teaching them to do that?
Are you teaching them that it's not the white man and you guys are doing it wrong?